When the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, or ANCSA, was passed, there were headlines in every newspaper, natives to get billions, natives to get millions of acres.
When our elders heard, somebody said, uh-oh, money's involved.
It was a moment in time that we had to move forward. We thought we were doing the right thing, but we didn't deal with the other elements of our way of life.
1 week we were just regular guys at the cannery. Next week we were members of the board of directors.
It was literally being thrown into the deep end of the pool of capitalism.
It makes politicians out of us rather than brothers and sisters.
What a dirty, rotten thing to do to us, turn our lands into corporate lands.
What have we become? People of the stumps.
After every big geological or glacial event or flood, we always came back to where we were created. That's our history. That's who we are. And the land defines us, who we are.
We don't have a written language. It's all oral. Totem poles is a way of recording those stories of our past. So it's all passed down from one generation to the next.
We have taught all of our children, this is our homeland. This is where the spirits of our ancestors roam. This is where I know that I'm going to have a continued presence.
Whole Alaska God gave to us. It's because He wanted it that way. We believe it, our people believe this. Our families said, don't lose your land. They always say, I'ya, this is your land.
At one time, this whole area was filled with wild birds, ducks, geese, and the salmon, you could just see it coming in. You knew it was coming in. All the place was full of life. The air, the water, the land, all full of life. We had everything we needed. To make a good living, we were rich.
Because of the abundant resources, the tribes were forced time and again to defend their ancestral lands from encroachment and destruction by foreign countries, including the United States.
After the first colonization, first by the Russians and then the Americans, we became an oppressed people. We didn't have the right to vote. We had to go to inferior schools. We were second-class citizens.
The Forest Service had started moving our people out of our summer camps throughout the region and burning down our smokehouses and our cabins and destroying our gardens that we had out in our summer camps, and asking us not to go back to those places anymore because we were not welcome. And that disrupted our whole way of life that is tied to our hunting, fishing, harvesting, and traditional customary ways that had been done for thousands of years. And the hurt that occurred was long-lasting.
Alaskan tribes spent decades demanding compensation from the U.S. for their lands. But it wasn't until oil was discovered in 1968 that their Aboriginal land claims were finally settled.
Tlinkits aren't corporations. Tlinkits are people. Tlinkits are a clan. Tlinkits are a tribe. Tlinkits are ravens and eagles. We're not an entity. We should not have to be driven by a dollar sign. When our elders heard that Anska was coming, there was somebody that said, uh-oh, uh-oh, money's involved. It's gonna hurt our people.
I was driving up on Hoona Mountain and ran across a relative of mine. Her and her husband were just coming back down and they had seen the first clear cut back there. And she was like, oh, she was crying. You see what they're doing to us? Do you see what they're doing to us? To this day, I think of her because we had no idea just what it would do to us.
When the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, or ANCSA, was passed, there were headlines in every newspaper and news outlet in Alaska: natives to get billions, natives to get millions of acres of land. There was tremendous pressure to use our land assets for economic development purposes.
1 week we were just regular guys at the cannery, and the next week we were members of the board of directors of Sea Alaska Corporation.
We had thousands of shareholders enrolled and each having stock, 100 shares, and their expectations were very, very high.
The economic opportunities at that time were primarily timber. And so most of the corporations selected lands for that purposes. And I have to say that our people were really looking forward to the wealth that it would bring to us.
And the big word then was it's per capita. We're going to get money per capita. I didn't know what per capita meant, but it sure sounded good. And that's what everybody was saying, we're going to get land and money.
We made the decision that we were going to go into the harvesting, road building, and marketing on an export basis our timber. And so we trained our people. We put them in logging companies, road building companies. We taught them how to chase the logs and load the logs on ships. We tried to contract as much as we could with our own people, and we created employment.
It was literally being thrown into the deep end of the pool of capitalism. How do you deal with that? No one told us, for example, that 9 out of every 10 businesses that are created fail within the first 5 years. We had a strong sense of who we were as Native people. We had no sense at all as to what it meant to be in business, or to look at land as a fungible asset, as a commodity to be used for economic development. To us, land had a very different meaning. It was the repository of our traditions, of our history. It was the place where our ancestors came from. It was something that we were stewards for and of for future generations of Alaska Native people.
There was absolutely no laws to protect any living thing. They were allowed to log down to the edge of the river. I already had been opposing the Forest Service logging to find out that the Forest Service was actually minimal compared to what devastation our own corporations brought on us. They hurt us. We still feel it. The negative impacts are still here.
This whole bay right here was discolored from what was coming down that creek. The mud just comes down out of there, and the hatchery people panic because their filters on the water coming into the hatchery, they have to change every hour or else the fish would suffocate. That watershed has changed completely because of the amount of minerals flowing out of there. So the water table in that creek and creeks that have watersheds that have been logged, they come up instantly because there's no big buffer of the big trees holding it back. That's very disturbing. To me, it means everything to have a healthy run of salmon in a creek, because now we know that at the very top of the mountains ranges and all of the trees and plants around one watershed is the specific DNA of that salmon in every plant, in every insect. How many hundreds or even thousands of species depend upon one salmon going up? When we see it clear-cut and taken and shipped out of our area, it's like ripping out our hearts. It's destroying the family of trees.
We are the forest because of the foods that we eat, the way we live, the respect we have for each other. When we go hunting, fishing, or even taking a plant, we'll thank that plant for giving us life, for sacrificing its life so that we could carry on, and for that we are grateful. It's not for sport. Sports fishing probably take a long time to get this many, but this is for food. To this day, we thank the resources that we're utilizing, including the water when we're fishing. We'll pick it up, go, geez, thank you for bringing us our food. Thank you for all that you do. When we look at the mountains and the trees, our people believe that our spirits, once we die, go into the mountains and live amongst the trees. We believe the spirits of our ancestors on all of Southeast, they're there. They're waiting for us. They're watching us. They're helping us. And these spirits of our ancestors, as well as all the life around us right now, is all the reason in the world to protect this beautiful country.
The language, when you hear it, you hear that sound, the guttural sound? The old people would talk to ravens. They talked to the bear people. They would talk to the salmon people. They would talk to the eagle people. Everything was a person to them. They respected it so much, they had to live that way. Love one another and forgive one another.
Tlingit way, this for that. It's our rule. It's one of our society's rules. If I do something bad to you, say something bad about you in our culture, and it's wrong, I'm going to have to pay for it publicly. I have to respect you. At some point, I have to pay you back. And potlatches are a way to settle all grievances. You give back, you know. It's not only ceremonial and family blood issues of giving names and honoring the dead, but it's also about sharing, and it's also about paying your debts.
What a dirty, rotten thing to do to us, turn our lands into corporate lands. We didn't have the power to fight it. You know what it takes to fight it? Money. They made sure we're poor, but we still fight it anyway.